Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and back with a Saturday live stream. Thought this one, I don't know if it's going to be a very long one or not. We'll find out, but figured in the wake of Dubai Watch Week, we should have a conversation about just what sort of goes on at these watch shows. I'm not planning to spend a lot of time recapping Dubai Watch Week since I wasn't there. And there are plenty of people who'd be more than happy to talk to you about what they actually experienced. But I do have a Monochrome article linked in the video description that I think will serve a useful sort of touch point to get at what I want to focus on, which is sort of if if these watch shows have lost the plot and it's too much halo piece, not enough actual practical watchmaking that people are really going to be able to go out, buy, and experience. So it's more of is this really good for the industry, or is this like an art fair where people are going and admiring a bunch of stuff that they'll never be able to own? And I don't know whether or not that serves a very useful purpose, but we will have a conversation about that. Actually, today, since I have the extended Thanksgiving period time off here in the United States, has been Thanksgiving. I am planning to go ahead and put together my state of the collection video for 2025. Actually, I have all the watches out off to the side. I was planning to shoot the footage earlier this morning, but I got distracted and wasn't able to do it. So I may do it right after this. But anyway, that'll be a thing. And then normally in January, I will do the video where I go over the wear time of like my most worn watches sort of thing. As of last year, I log it like really like specifically log it on a spreadsheet. So, but obviously it's not the end of the year until after December. So we will have to wait for that. But I do normally do the state of the collection in November. So I'm right there at the kind of the tail end of when I would normally go ahead and shoot it. On the wrist today is a Baltic Aquascaf bronze watch, sort of brown dial, which I just got out because I haven't worn it in a while. So let me go ahead and greet the chat, and then we will get underway with the discussion. First, I'm assuming is probably not here anymore, but Ink Petit. I can't say such things. Inco, I'm going to call you Inco Petinia. But anyway, doesn't matter. Ink, I'm going to call you Ink. Ink says, gosh darn it, for the first time since our daylight savings, I get here at 4 p.m. to see that yours must have shifted now too. Yes, many of us cannot escape the wrath of daylight savings time. We must put up with it as best we can. Next, if I can get for some reason, the screen is no longer responding to me being able to hide and unhide the chat. This is very, very odd. I've never actually had this issue before. So I'm checking some stuff. Star, unstar, hide, unhide. Interesting. Well, this is probably going to be untenably frustrating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end and I'm going to come right back in and we'll see. Oh, there we go. Finally got it. I'm trying all the buttons. So Robert, welcome to the live stream and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Good morning, Dennis, and belated happy Thanksgiving to those of you in the States. Yes, Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope you all had a really good time. Oh, Ink is still here without a phonetic pronunciation of the name, but I probably still butcher it even if you spelled it entirely out. Well, glad you were able to make it. John, good morning. Glad you're here as well. Hope things are going well for you this weekend. Koji, thank you for being a 99-cent club member. There's a link in the video description to that if anyone wants to do that. Is that incompetent plus dementia? We don't know. I want to go with ink. I feel like this has to be ink. That is very driven by like maybe a calligraphy hobbyist or just maybe works for Bic. I don't know, but these are the narratives that I tell myself. And Trap Vision, good morning to you. Hope things are going well where you are. Okay. So I mentioned I have one article linked. I'll go ahead and share that now just so you can see it because this was like case in point, right, for me. So this is Monochrome, but plenty of other sites have done this where they like picked top 5, top 10, top 20, top everything. I guess it doesn't really matter. Watches that sort of were unveiled, launched, or timed around Dubai Watch Week. So for those that don't know, Dubai hosts a watch fair every other year. So this year was again the second year where it would kick off, and it basically functions like a Watches and Wonders in a lot of ways. In some regard, I would go ahead and say that because Dubai is more of this, I feel it's more of an enthusiast-driven thing. It makes more sense in this case for there to be a lot of Halo pieces, but it still gets at the same point that I think anyone could have brought up. I don't know if it was the problem when Basel World was going on or not. It definitely is a problem in Watches and Wonders. And I mentioned this year's Watches and Wonders actually looked a little more realistic, I guess would be my phrase, versus what I felt like, especially last year, where I start to look at everything that's on these lists in particular, and it's like it's stuff that nobody buys. I'm going to use some hyperbole, guys, but I think you'll get where I'm coming from. Like nobody buys this stuff. Like this is stuff where people would save up their entire career and not buy it, right? Like they won't ever spend this much on a watch. I know there are some people that will buy this sort of stuff, but I just wanted to walk through some of these things. Plus, you'll get to see some nice photos because a lot of these are really nice watches. Though we could start debating how many of these are legible. But okay, so again, I've not really spent a lot of time on Dubai Watch Week. We've talked about some of the watch. We'll talk at least one that came up because we talked about it last week's live stream. But okay, so Arnold and Son Constant Force Tourbillon 11 Platinum. By the name, you know this is expensive, right? I said platinum. I said tourbillon. Arnold and Son is not a cheap brand, and yeah, it's an attractive watch. Doesn't seem to spend a lot of real estate telling the time. So as a practical watch, I don't know, but very well finished, of course. I probably not something I would personally get, even though I do think aesthetically it's attractive. But do they say how much it is? Of course they do. All right, so VAT included 140,000 Swiss francs. So VAT out, but the franc's stronger than the dollar. I'm going to say this is going to run you over 140,000 US dollars. Okay, so six-figure watch. All right. Well, but they're not all going to be that bad, right? Right? So how about the Chopard LUC Grand Strike? Chiming watch. I do love a good chiming watch. Unfortunately, I can't say this one is a good one because I find it almost illegible given how they've configured this. There's going to be a lot of skeletonized watches on this list because nothing says expensive like skeletonized unreadable watches. But I do like Chopard a lot. For a brand I've never owned a watch from, I've been sorely tempted by it. Again, as a chimer, this might be really fascinating to listen to, but aesthetically, again, not a watch that's really resonating with me. But how much is it? How about 780,000 Swiss francs? Okay, so nobody's buying it, right? Like this is house money now. Not house money as in Vegas house money as in you've bought yourself a house. You probably buy yourself around here, you buy yourself two houses. The average retail price of a house in the county I live is $350,000 right now. So this is easily two houses worth of watch. Again, interesting watch. Here's a shot of the back, which I think is actually better looking than the front. But again, like this is the stuff that's getting all of the attention. So I'm using this as lay the groundwork of my tale that I'm going to discuss. How about another tourbillon, another one in platinum, but this time from Daniel Roth. How much? 185,000 Swiss francs. Okay. Now, Daniel Roth is an interesting brand. I do like their case shape. I like that they have that sort of a DNA to it. They're kind of like a dress watch Panerai. I don't mean that in the sense of largeness. I mean that in the sense of all of their watches look the same. But nonetheless, I've never happened to pick one up. I like this one better than the first tourbillon we looked at because I feel like the real estate is better exploited to actually doing things, telling the time and providing complications that are meaningful. But nonetheless, at a price point where the watch is near on $200,000 US, as attractive as it is, I'm raising the question about why we spend any time talking about this in one regard, in the commercial regard. So, all right, how about Ferdinand Berthaud? I probably missaid that. Apologies. Chronometre FB3 SBCX Siddiqui. Okay, so because Siddiqui organizes Dubai Watch Week, it's not unusual for there to be pieces that are done kind of like in collaboration with the guy organizing it. But again, this is listed on a watch journalist site as a top 10 watch of the event. They made 3 of these things. Price on request. It's going to be over 6 figures, so that's not going to be a concern. Actually, so far, this is probably the most attractive watch of the ones I've seen. Relatively readable, even with I don't know about the hands over the skeletonized section with the balance, but relatively readable. Again, not a watch design that I'm particularly interested in. But again, another watch is going to be over $100,000. All right, Gerard Perregaux, right? The poor man's Royal Oak, which nobody who owns a Laureato wants to ever hear ever. And it's its own DNA. It's a bit of a joke. But the 3 gold bridges Laureato. So you're definitely, if you're familiar with a relatively recent Christopher Ward, you're going to get some vibes out of that. Though I'm sure this one's much better finished. It's also much better priced, and by better I mean better for the company because they're charging you 162,000 francs, Swiss francs, for a 50-piece limited edition. That again, I question the readability of, but the Three Bridges reminds me of that Christopher Ward that came out last year. But I mean, it's a GP, so it's going to be nice. But again, it's really, 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 really expensive. So, but we're spending time on it. H. Moser, they always have to do something, right? So how about a streamliner? But this one, Perpetual Moon Concept in Meteorite, 35,000 Swiss francs. This is actually the most affordable one we've talked about so far. It's also the ugliest. I don't like meteorite dials in general. I'm all the downvotes I'm going to get today for everything I hate. But again, this is the Moser where you can't tell the time because they don't put any indices on, even hour markers. I don't like this direction of the company. The moon phase looks interesting, and that's about the only thing I like. I'm not even a big fan of this handset, so definitely not for me. This one actually, though, picked by Monochrome, would be one that someone conceivably, realistically could save up for and get a 35,000 Swiss franc watch. So, but there are much better streamliners than that one. Here's a picture of the back, by the way. Moser does have a very nice movement, but all of these brands have really nice movements that we've talked about so far. How about Laurent Ferrier? 43,000 Swiss franc for a classic origin beige watch. So we're in the price now about a day date for Rolex. This is actually around where Laurent Ferrier generally trades for retail. Very expensive watch, but it's conceivable that someone might save up enough to get one. So I kind of understand this being discussed in a commercial sense. Don't worry, we're almost through all of these. The Resonance Type 1 Round RG. Resonance, again, now we have a new contender for the lowest priced watch. This one is a grade 5 titanium case. However, they gold-plated the disc, I guess, or the dial. They've gold-plated something. It's about 18,000 Swiss francs. I'm on the fence about Resonance. I kind of like some of their designs. I don't like all of the choices that they've been making lately, but it's a very interesting watch at the very least, should you be so inclined to check one out. 18,150 is the exact Swiss franc. Here's the only affordable watch, I think, on the entire list, a Tudor, and by affordable, I still mean luxury, of course. Tudor Ranger Dune White, they put on here. It's about, what, 3,400, 3,500 euro. We talked about this last week. I like the colorway better than the black one, but I think the bigger news was that they made this smaller. So now you can actually get one that's a more realistic field watch size. And then I think maybe our last one here at 100,000 Swiss francs is the Urwerk Ulysse Nardin UR Freak hybrid, which was the kind of cover shot for this article with Monochrome. It's okay. Not my style, too avant-garde for me, but I get it in the sense that it's like a different take on the Freak, and so I'll salute it for that. So 10 watches, 7 of which are 100,000 or more dollars. Only one of which would be realistically obtainable by many people, and that would be the Tudor. And then 2 that I maybe could imagine people, well, 3 I'll say that people might save up or you know, who are really into watches might realistically still be able to get, like the Resonance or the Laurent Ferrier. So the reason I wanted to lay all that out was I wanted to just have a brief conversation with those of you who are live on chat. And if you're not live and you want to leave comments on it, I'd love to read them. But is this the right thing for watch shows to do? And I do know that, okay, Dubai Watch Week really is like a fair, right? It's like a celebration of watches. So again, take all my jabs and my hyperbole, with a grain of salt, because I do understand that this is really organized kind of for the love of horology, right? But I felt that this was a good point to bring up in the context of like Watches and Wonders, because this happens at Watches and Wonders too. We walk away from Watches and Wonders and we end up spending the entire time, it feels like, talking about the land dweller you can't get, but at least is priced realistically. And then things like, here's the most complicated Vacheron to ever be created, which none of you will ever own. And it's like, it's supposed to be like new releases of cars, right? And I know there's supercars, and we had posters of cars and stuff up on our walls as kids, or we looked at them at magazines or whatever, if you're into cars. But like, people don't buy those. I know some people buy them, but people don't buy those. People are going out and they'll be like, all right, do I want a Toyota, or am I going to move up to the Lexus, or I'm going to get like a Porsche? Like, that's what people like. It's commercial stuff, and there's luxury stuff, and there's affordable stuff. I'm not saying everything needs to be affordable, but what I think's interesting is that it seems like when we do these things, when we cover this stuff, these shows, all the attention is on stuff that none of these readers of Monochrome are buying. They're not going to buy any of this stuff. Tudor Ranger aside, they're not going to buy any of this. So, in a way, I'm kind of like, from a practical standpoint, I want to ask you guys, like, what's the point in spending this much time covering it? And again, this was a best of list that we were discussing. So I understand, like, I'll show some photos because me just I don't like just looking at my head. In a way, Ariel Adams has talked about this on a blog to watch before, where he feels it's really important to cover these Halo products, right? Like, it's important journalistically to discuss them and to give them a lot of coverage. I disagree with him. My stance coming into this, and I want to see where you guys think, is that this is a pretty big waste of time. There should be some coverage, absolutely, because the brands are making this stuff. But most of the time on sites should really be invested in covering the watches that people will actually be able to buy. And that means stuff that's highly limited should probably not get a lot of attention, and stuff that's highly expensive probably doesn't deserve a lot of attention either. Because what do you need to learn? Like, if you've got the money to buy this Laureato, is Monochrome really going to help you out with the coverage? So I'm really pivoting this to one. Right now, I want to talk about the journalistic side, like this level of attention. They do, again, this is a best of article. I understand that's it's fair. It's fair game to do it here. But there will be articles on this site breaking down the specs of these watches, like spec sheets, like real human beings are going to go and buy this, and they're not. And so I'm questioning the amount of, maybe they just have to stay busy. I don't know, but it seems a little weird to spend a lot of time really going into all of these sort of things. And I guess I'll check. Let's put my money where my mouth is to see about what are their stories that they've been hitting on. So a Roger Dupree homage, that's probably super expensive. I mean, I could click on it, I suppose, and we could find out. But I wanted to see if some of these Dubai Watch Week things were being covered. There's a lot of stuff that came out of Dubai, so you're seeing some of this other stuff, like the Federic Constant and the Piquene. I've thought about getting one of their watches before, that they've also done. So it's a mix. It's a mix of things that they've gone ahead and covered. But I don't want to keep clicking through all of it because I think it's better to look at the watches. But so anyway, that's, I guess, my point. My first point is, one, from a media standpoint, there's just not a lot of value like talking about this Daniel Roth, is there? I guess. I don't know. Let me see what you guys think, because I'm rambling at this point. So Koji says, great name. That's in regards to Incomopetinia. Think of it like a Roman goddess of incompetence. Okay, that is very clever. Tuna, thank you for being here, and thank you for being a club member. Says that actually looks impressive. I think you said this right around, was it the Chopard? I think it was the Chopard you may have said this on, based off of the timestamp on your comment. Koji says, have you ever attended any of these types of events in person? No, I haven't. There's not much point for me. Well, it'd be really, like, there'd be a lot of money for me to get out to Dubai, for example. Watches and Wonders as well, like it being overseas. I'm not a real journalist. I just do this as a hobby. I don't even have 5,000 subs on this channel. Like, this channel wouldn't pay for the trip. Like, it's just, no. So no, I have not. I've not done. I thought about going to some of the local events, but here in the Kansas City area, we don't seem to have a lot of like the watch meetup stuff, but definitely nothing like a fair like this. Trap says, some of the watches you've shown are cool to look at and try out, but I'm more interested in the pieces that fit my lifestyle. And that's kind of what I was trying to, you said it a lot more eloquently than me, but that's kind of the point I was getting at with the journalism thing. Like, yeah, cover what you need to cover, right? I get it. Again, some of this is being a little facetious, but I'm trying to generate a talking point. And I see that I'm wrong. Tuna says it was the Arnold and Son that he meant. The dial work is great. It reminds me of like looking at the guilloche on a Breguet. But, Breguet watches, some of them are attainable and some of them are like, what one GPHC, where it was how did I hear someone describe it? It was the Meistersinger Breguet. It was Breguet's attempt at a Meistersinger. It's a super expensive watch. But I mean, that's an award show, so that's a different boat, right? I get it. I know I'm not. In a lot of ways, I'm wrong. Basically, I know I'm wrong on some of my critiques here, but I'm trying to think of it from a commercial standpoint. From a commercial standpoint, there's no value in spending any time on this watch that we're looking at. There's not any value. Arnold Sun has value in trying to get it out there to some degree, but how many of these are they even making? Did they limit this one? I don't remember if they limited it. Some of these are highly limited pieces. 11 pieces. So again, I'm not saying they told Monochrome to cover this. If them bringing this to Dubai Watch Week makes sense to me. There being this, oh, here we go. An introductory article about this watch does not make, there's no practical purpose for this article to exist. That's what I'm saying. So here we go. We can learn all about its 41.5 millimeter diameter. We can learn that it's almost 14 millimeters thick. We can hear about the anchor logo being done in relief. We can talk about the craftsmanship and the zigzags and, this thing in honor of Abraham Louis Breguet, even though this isn't Breguet doing the watch, and all of that. And it's all interesting intellectually. But ultimately, I don't know if anyone who's buying this watch is actually going to read this article because there's so few watches. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's kind of there's the whole spec sheet and everything. Like, this is like a real product that real human beings buy, and it's kind of not, right? It is a real product, but like normal people, and I mean like normal rich people, won't buy this. So I guess I'm a little perplexed at the amount of time we spend on the stuff that doesn't get into on the risks of people, like what Trap mentioned earlier. So Trap brought up this about pieces that fit his lifestyle, right? Like, how much ink do we spend on the stuff that fits his lifestyle? And he decides what his lifestyle is, but let's like micro brand stuff and all the rest of it. And how much coverage do we give to a new iteration of the Bambino from Orient, for example? It gets some, but you think about how much ink, virtual ink, digital ink, is spilled for something like what I'm showing you right now. And it's disproportionate to the number of people that will ever even try the thing on. And many of the people who will try the thing on, who maybe were at the show and got to try the thing on, they're never going to actually own it. So in a way, it's almost like, I don't know. I feel like we're in a little bit of a weird world where we're kind of in one boat. We've got the practical, like these are devices that people wear, be it for time telling or jewelry or whatever. And then we got the other boat, which is like the Louvre, right? And it's like, this is art, and we're trying to appreciate art for art's sake. But art for art's sake doesn't need this. It doesn't need a spec sheet. If that's what we really care about, it doesn't need a spec sheet. But we've done it up like it's a real product. I don't know. The word I want to use is quaint. I find it quaint that this is done in this fashion. But anyway, one of those things. Tuna says the Rolls-Royce classes are few and far between. However, no one can deny that kind of work they do and these watchmakers can do is impressive. Absolutely. And them presenting this sort of stuff like what we're looking at from Arnold & Son at the show, I'm not criticizing that. I'm kind of taking what the journalists are covering at the show, and I'm sort of questioning why are they spending so much time on something of so little like, if the thing is to appreciate it for art's sake, then having a gallery with high quality imagery makes a lot of sense. Having some data on the movement would make sense, especially if it's a unique movement. I kind of get my own hypocrisy of, I can see like there's intellectual value in having it documented. Absolutely. But these are rags that supposedly exist to help people decide what watches they're going to buy, right? Well, they're not going to buy this. So I don't know that it needed to be in multiple pieces, but it is clearly. It's in multiple articles. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. Jeremy, welcome, Jeremy, and thank you for being an INSET Club member. Jeremy says, good morning. I like the high-end pieces being covered because, to use your car analogy, with concept cars, it shows a directionality of where part of the industry can be going and can forecast trends. That's interesting. I hadn't considered it in that regard. So that's a good point. So and I do agree with Ariel from A Blog to Watch that there should be some coverage, right? These are watches that were actually built. But when we're talking like piece uniques and stuff, I really struggle when people spend a lot of time, investing a lot. It's like tech sheets on a piece you need. Tech sheets, not articles about that it exists, but like the standard first look documentation, like you were literally about to walk into your area boutique and buy the thing. That's kind of where I have an intellectual struggle for, because I the other angle I want to go with has to do from the watchmaker's perspective. I'll jump to that in a moment. I still have more chat to get caught up with. Um, John says these watches are eye candy, but not realistic for the average guy, and that's kind of what my driving force. And even if I take average to a really like generous, like people who make $1 million a year, for example, probably aren't considering buying this watch at 10% of their salary. Maybe I don't know, but they made so few, I don't even think they could get it. That's kind of my angle. Um, Al, welcome, by the way. Are you AI? I think it's AI. I always say Al because I think is it an L or I'm looking closer and closer at my screen, like the letter is going to look any different to me than it does at this current distance. But regardless, thank you for being here. Hi, Dennis. I completely agree with your analysis and questions. I think the point of these unobtainable Halo piece articles is to give the 99% something to say, what is the point about? In which case, mission accomplished, because here I am doing an entire video live stream about what is the point. They are very nice looking. I mean, don't get me. Well, that one was this. Oh, Chopard, I love so much about what you do, but woof, I just cannot. But I don't like skeletonized styles very much, so it's a me thing, not a them thing. Trap continues. These events seem to be more of a networking platform for certain journalists and social media personalities, possibly like this. Dubai again. I want to note that Dubai Watch Week is different. Like it's more of in my view, I view it as more of a fun fair. Watches and Wonders I get more frustrated with, that definitely pull in a lot of journalists, and they even joke about how they act at these things, where it's like everyone is at the Rolex counter waiting for the. I imagine it's like, oh, sorry, the analogy is completely wrong, but it's gonna be like a shopping mall. They're gonna bring up the steel security grate. It's gonna roll up, and then people are gonna go in and they'll see like, whoa, they're land dweller. I get that they do it, and that totally makes sense, because where is your bread buttered? Even if a lot of people won't buy Rolex sells very, very well, and there's a lot of people are going to try and get the watch. So there's a good commercial reason to cover Rolex. Just like ostensibly there's a good commercial reason to cover Tudor. I say ostensibly because for me there seems to be a disconnect, and we've discussed it before on this channel, but Tudor is one of those brands. I should have just closed the photo and scrolled down instead of making you sit through all this. But Tudor's a brand where they get talked about more than they actually get bought. But there are a lot of people. I mean, I see a lot of wrist shots with people who own Tudors. So, but it's kind of funny because in this world, and by this world I mean the world of YouTube, like you'll see, do a search sometime if you want. And even though Tudor is like 20th in Swiss sales, there's so many more videos about their watches than there are Cartier. I don't know if there are more than Omega. Omega being like number 3 on the list. I think Omega gets a lot too, but that makes sense. There's a lot of Omega sales. Tudor, not so much. But anyway, neither here nor there, I suppose. Tuna says, I think that there is a certain beauty in attainable watches for ordinary people. Yes, and that's kind of the other angle I wanted to get at. So the angle of the watch brands, the manufacturers, not so much the watch makers themselves who do the incredible craftsmanship, but the watch brands. So part of the value I've assumed in going and doing events like this is, again, it's an assumption, and Dubai may be a different example. And again, I may be wrong. Like some of you have pointed out the value of seeing the trends, like the concept car argument, I think is a very strong argument. But I do really wonder why it feels sometimes to me like they don't push the obtainable stuff. Like the brands almost seem like they're not pushing the attainable stuff. They show you the halo stuff. And I don't really understand the strategy. Is the strategy to make you look at this and go, that is beautiful and I wish I could own it. And then you see how much it is and you can't, but maybe you navigate to Ferdinand's website or go to one of the ADs and you look at their other stuff and you start to contemplate, maybe I could do this. Another example, maybe a better example, would be like this. So the Streamliner. All right, this isn't even like at the halo end of Moser's collection, right? This is 35,000 Swiss francs. But maybe you look at this and you find it intriguing. You like you're unlike me. You like the idea of there not being hour or minute markers. And you just want hands and a very sterile dial. Maybe you like the meteorite, maybe you don't. And maybe you go to a Moser boutique and then you realize, hey, you can find Pioneers that lack markers, and Pioneers are the entry level Moser, and maybe that's the strategy. But I don't know. Like, to me, I would think, like, if you're at a show, especially if it's a lot of enthusiasts, and I guess it does depend on the type of enthusiast. There's a certain type that would fly out to Dubai. Like, you got to be in deep to go out to Dubai, unless you're already in the area, and I'm sure there were some that are. But otherwise, it would be more like, doesn't it make the most sense to, like, if Moser were to go to a watch fair, shouldn't they mostly have Pioneers? Like, wouldn't that make the most sense? Like, that's what most people might be able to buy, maybe. So why not present with that? Like with Tudor, most of the catalog is all within relative range of each other, so it makes a lot of sense. Like if Omega was to show up to a watch fair, I don't think, in my mind, it doesn't make sense to focus on their high horology chops, which they definitely have. And I'm not saying they shouldn't make examples of like that repeater chronograph that would time out what the chronograph reading was. Completely impractical and totally cool. Incredible watchmaking. And it looked good too. Looked way better than this. But like if you're going to like a watch show with casual people, don't you bring Speedmasters and Seamasters and Aquaterras? Isn't that, which are a form of Seamaster? Isn't that what you're going to sell? Like, where's the emphasis on what they'd actually make their money on? We hear all the time. We've talked about it on this show about the brands and how they're struggling to make sales and how, it's a hard time. It's a hard time for them. The tariffs are putting pressure on them. People are unsure about the economy. Watch sales are down mostly across the board. I don't understand where, like here, Laurent Ferrier is doing a watch that's in line with their regular catalog, just like the Tudor. Their strategy here makes sense. So again, not all of these examples were true examples of a problem. And the Resonance one is in line with other Resonance priced watches. So the stuff they put at the bottom of the Monochrome list, other than this, were things that kind of made sense for the brand. What I don't understand, though, is especially when times are hard, why are you not trying to sell the watches that will actually sell? Why are we spending time trying to promote the stuff that is more of a concept, really, I suppose? Very limited production. I mean, I'm sure the profit margins on them are great. Is that how they really stay afloat, is selling stuff like this? I don't know if that's true. I find it a little sus, as the kids would say today. Do the kids still say sus? We're going to say that the kids today still say sus. I don't know that that's true. Underachieving watch collector. Hello. Hope things are going well for you. Tuna says the average client for Arnold and Son won't be much interested in a cheap brand like Rolex. Sure. And different brands are, with different price points, make sense being at the show. I want to note, though, that of this entire list that Monochrome chose to say were the best watches, there's only one that most of you watching right now might contemplate, and that's this Tudor, right? It's the only one many people, because it's the only one that's under $10,000. It's the only one. And in fact, of these 10, 7 of them are over $100,000. Where's the middle? Where's the middle of even that luxury slice? Because even this watch on the screen is a luxury watch at a luxury price point. It is an expensive piece of hardware. And maybe there weren't other, I didn't go to the Dubai Watch Week site and I didn't go to the show. I can't tell you that it was just there weren't attainable brands at Dubai, or they just were so unimpressive to Monochrome staff that they didn't want to talk about them in this particular article. A lot of stuff got announced in as part of the timing of the Dubai Watch Week. So they do a recap. They've got a video. We're not going to play the video here, but in terms of the stuff that they talk about and they cover, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that happen. There was a big interview with Rolex's CEO that got a lot of attention, just because I think mostly because the CEO of Rolex doesn't really seem to talk to very many people. Here's all the stuff, I believe, at least according to Monochrome, that came out during the during Watches and Wonders. So Atelier Win actually had one. This is a few $1,000s. It's not like that $30,000 thing they made. I think this is closer to $5,000, sort of thing. Again, it's just, they clearly weren't impressed enough by it at its 5,000 euros to spend any time going into it in terms of a top watch that they wanted to discuss. And again, top watch article is going to be top watch article. And I guess if you've got something with a budget and something with infinite budget, something with infinite budget hypothetically should always win. I almost think they only put the Tudor Ranger in there for clickbait. I really don't see why you would there, other than making it smaller. What was really impressive about it versus the old version? You might love the watch. I'm not. In fact, I praised the changes as improvements, but I don't know. I don't know. So what? Kadoki had a watch. I actually thought this was very interesting. I like this visually. I think it looks really good. Not sure what the price was on this. Is it more obtainable? Kinda. 11,500 euro. Not as obtainable as I thought it would be. Beautiful movement though. Wow. That I like the dial a lot too though. Again, there's stuff that again was more realistic. So there's stuff that's at the show that people could save up for and get. Like a lot of people could potentially save up. Maybe it'd be a retirement watch, but that sort of thing. But it's one of those aspects. Tuna does put in the reminder for me not to forget that VAT is normally 20% in Europe and the UK. Very good point. Since most of the prices though are in Swiss francs, try to say it right, in Swiss francs, I also have to remember though that it takes more dollars to equal Swiss francs. So usually when I've seen comparison prices, I don't know if normally the comparisons include the VAT or not. So I have to hedge, but it is a fair point. So, okay. So maybe some of the stuff closer to 100,000 might actually be more realistically obtainable to 80,000. We're still, other than Laurent Ferrier, like missing the entire $50,000 to $75,000 slice of the market, but maybe that market doesn't exist. I don't know. It gets very weird once we get up into those pricing. Von Kroll, hello. Hope things are going well for you. Trap says, I imagine owners of microbrands get inspired by these designs and start working on a piece with some of these aesthetics at an approachable price. Now, that's another interesting type of show to bring up, though, right? Is the microbrand show. So microbrands often go to things like British Watchmaking Days had a lot of microbrands at it, right? And they have brought things to sell. Like they're slinging watches at events. Like that's the plan. I don't, but it seems like journalistically there's less coverage of that style of it. Maybe that's because it's not a bunch of new releases, and we knew there would be new releases here. But again, like when a new release is De Bethune, and don't get me wrong, this I do not. The Star Trek, I like Star Trek, but the De Bethune Star Trek dial has never. It saves me money. Let's put it that way. That dial saves me money. This dial I really like, but boring classical dial approaches. So I like that side of it. But how much do you think this is? It's definitely 100,000 something, right? All right, 195,000 Swiss francs. That's excluding taxes, so I assume excluding the VAT as well. But if not, we'll kick it down to about 130,000, 140,000 Swiss francs. So again, it's De Bethune. I understand, but I don't understand in terms of the media coverage and also the angle that these brands are, depending which brand it is, like this, like Gerard Perregaux, right? So 162,000 excluding VAT in this case, Swiss franc Laureato. But there are Laureatos that human beings can own, and I would think that, again, not criticizing this article from Monochrome, but I'm just saying that in terms of what Gerard Perregaux, my understanding is Gerard Perregaux is not doing well as a company right now. Like they seem to be struggling more than Ulysse Nardin ever since splitting from Kering. And I don't think this is the salvation that we're looking for here. In fact, I think it's really unfortunate because I'm sure this was in design for a while, but people are going to look at this and say they tried to copy Christopher Ward, who tried to copy someone else. I don't know. But it's one of those aspects that I think is a little odd. Von Kroll says he is also out of touch with the kids today. Koji says he thinks the kids would say it's a 6-7 figure watch. Would they, or would they say, what's a watch? Did you ever see that? Everyone has. It was like one of the most hated commercials ever, but it's the one with a little girl outside. She's like using a tablet. This was years ago. And someone says something about her on the computer and she goes, what's a computer? And everyone's just like, kids know what a computer is, even if they don't own one. They know what a computer is. So I think kids know what a watch is, even if they even if they don't know. But they, yes, 6 or 7 figures for a watch. The kids today would probably say, why wouldn't you just buy an Apple Watch? That would probably be what they would say. Bronco says he does like the Tudor. His kind of boring. I would never own a Ranger. I don't like the handset enough, but I think the new look is better than the prior larger all black one or black dial one. I do like the white desert one more. And he notes the $30,000 Atelier Win didn't do much for interest in the brand. That was shooting way too high. You say bit of an overreach. I say massive overreach. Atelier Win lost the plot going for that. Jumping up that high that quickly just doesn't make a lot of sense. It reminds me of even Tudor, runs that risk. Tudor got a lot of criticism when they released that like 15, what is it, 15, 20,000, maybe it was 25,000 because it was all gold bracelet. Again, depending if it was on the bracelet or not. That gold Black Bay, the 18 karat gold cased one. It's like your Tudor, not Rolex. What are you doing? I'm sure some people bought that one though, but I don't know. Maybe it gets you higher up on the list or something. So yeah, it's one of those interesting things. Bonkrell notes that regarding the Debethune, that it screams Star Trek to him, and he doesn't want Trek on my watch. That's my issue. I could see it if but you gotta go like all in. It's got like I want the spaceship on the watch and stuff. Like you gotta just like hug it. I had an episode once a video. I don't think it was a live stream. Don't remember anymore. Where I did some avant-garde designs I do like, and there was a really cool space themed watch that I saw. I think it was from a smaller brand, but it like went like dialed it to 11. It's like if you're gonna do that, like I want a shuttle bay or I want a shuttlecraft, maybe a photon torpedo as the second hand, and do an invisible second hand as the photon torpedo going around. Like do it like that, and we can talk. Then you'll probably price it too high for me, but we'll still talk. We'll talk. But Debethune being like, we're elegant, we're fancy, and we got springy little lugs that are awesome and they hug your wrist, and then we put the Starfleet emblem on our watch. Doesn't work for me. And that's why they don't sell as well as they want to. They want to be FP Jorn. You're never going to be Jorn with Star Trek logo on your watch. You got to hide that deep inside your belly. Can't let people know about that. So anyway, Tuna says, I could almost buy a small house for 185,000 Swiss francs. Yes. I get it. There's some people that they'll be able to afford this stuff. I just don't know who we're talking to with all of this coverage. That's the main thing. Like if you're this wealthy to buy the watches we mostly looked at from the Monochrome top 10 list, I would assume you'd have been at Dubai to just check them out in person. But that's all I had for today. So I'm actually going to plan to get ready to start filming my State of the Collection video. So if I sound exhausted, it's because my voice is probably shot already. But I want to go ahead and do it while I have the longer weekend, because otherwise, I'll tell you what, the honest reason why I want to do it now. I wound all of those watches today and set the dates too. So I have a very small window to get that shot where they all kind of look the same. Because I don't want to do that again, because it takes several minutes with 18 watches. It takes a while. So anyway, that is it for this live stream. I will plan to have another one next weekend, I believe. Yes, I should have no problem doing that. So I'll plan to be back. Don't know what the topic will be, but until then, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you guys finish up your leftovers, those of you who are still enjoying the remnants of U.S. Thanksgiving. And I will talk to you all on the next video. Take care, everybody. See you later.